All right. So good morning to the world, the Facebook world, for many people, the only world. I'm with my good acquaintance and friend, Erin Fisher, uh, the CEO of Atlantic Mediation Services. And we're talking today about, who gets the house. We've all, before we get into the topic, Erin, I know that you will be new to my people and I'm
Yes.
new to your people.
Yes.
So first, you know, to my people, let us know what you do and how you got to where you are.
Sure. So thank you, first of all, for having me on your show and Facebook Live this morning. Happy to be here. So a little bit about what I do. I opened a mediation practice right at the beginning of COVID, but I essentially handle people through conflict, and that could be from a dispute with a neighbor, a contract dispute, divorce, child custody, changing, those sorts of things, and workplace disputes. So my mediation practice is probably 70% divorce and child custody, and the rest workplace mediation. And then every now and then I'll get a family dispute, things like that. So I work with clients at the same time, usually over video chat. When COVID's over, it'll be in person, and we talk through the problems, what the conflict is about, how they've been hurt, and then figure
Mhm.
out a way forward. What does right look like for them going forward? How can the relationship adjust? And in a divorce situation, getting them prepared to either work with an attorney or self-file a divorce. And I have, I'm trained in all of the rules and regulations for Virginia and filing, for that sort of, for divorce and what the requirements are, and child custody, spousal support, all of those sorts of things. So I help my clients through that.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It is
And I mean, it's not just, and it's because you're dealing with a lot of relationships and relationships kind of coming up to like a crisis point. Sometimes in a
Mhm.
crisis point there's the relationship aspect, the emotions, and then there's the legal side. And so there are the different levels of
Yes,
negotiation that are going into what you're having to do, what the couple is having to do. um
that's right. Yep.
and
Yeah.
for me, I'm in real estate, and one of those aspects of the preparing for a separation or whatever. I mean, dealing more with the selling of a home, or even the buying of a home.
Mhm.
There's the title of this is, who gets the house, right? So
Right.
we've all heard firsthand, or most of us secondhand. For me, secondhand, third hand, fourth hand. That when a couple is splitting or something like that. Someone will say like, "I get the house," or "I get to keep the house," or whatever.
Yes.
So help us understand. So let's say someone is divorcing, separating. Like, what actually happens when it comes
Right.
to the house, to real estate?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So in Virginia, there's really no such thing as a separation. However, the date that you decide to no longer be a couple becomes a factor in your divorce. And
Okay.
so in Virginia, if you have children, it's 6 months, or it's 1 year. If you're single and you have no children, it's 6 months.
Okay.
And so when you meet with a mediator, or an attorney, but a mediator, it's usually faster to meet with a mediator because both of you are in the same room. Both of you are
Okay.
talking about all of your joint assets. And so for many people, a home that they own is their biggest asset.
Okay.
And they purchase a home together, especially when they were married. The way that Virginia looks at it is that it's split down the middle. Well,
Okay.
most people right now do not own their home outright. And so
Right.
in a separation agreement, we talk about what, you know, what is the home value, and
Hmm.
what they want to sell it for, and those sorts of things. However, me as a mediator, I have no idea what a house is truly worth. And
Okay.
well, I have clients that will go on to Zillow and say, "Oh, it's worth this," and my neighbor said he got this, and there's a lot of hearsay and really some information that they're just pulling out of the internet, which is not reliable. And so
Mhm.
I'm always encouraging them, please work with a realtor, work with Moki, work with someone who can tell you
Right.
what your home is really worth, what you're really looking at. Plus, what you may need to reinvest in order to get it ready to sell. And so
Hmm.
those parts come together to determine what really is the home value, what you would take away from it. And so often, we'll talk about, once they have those real facts and figures,
Hmm.
you talk about what's left after you paid realtor fees, you paid for
Okay.
upgrades, what are you looking for, and then how do you move forward. And so that's the biggest. Real estate becomes almost the tent pole in a separation
Hmm.
agreement, and property settlement agreement, which is what everything in Virginia is based on a PSA, and that PSA turns into your divorce. And so that includes, property settlement, includes real estate, includes cars, student loans, credit card debt, child support, spousal
Okay.
support if required.
Hmm. So you mentioned the separation agreement, and then this um PSA, the
Mhm.
property settlement agreement. That
Yep.
so
It's one
for
and the same. Yep. It's called a
one and the
property
same.
settlement. Yeah.
Okay.
Called, yep.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So what exactly is that? And so the property settlement agreement not only includes the home that the
Mhm.
couple own, but also like all the
All the other
assets
stuff.
and everything. Okay.
Exactly. Assets,
Okay.
and then things, in mediation, particularly because the couple is sitting there together, they're able to really push through some of the emotional pieces. So
Okay.
whether it's, their favorite, grandmother's heirlooms, things in the house, something that's sentimental to them. It also can include, in Virginia, a household pet is considered property. And so who gets the puppy or the cat, or and
Hmm.
all of those things, that all gets determined. But I would say that the biggest, the tent pole, that's, the biggest piece is
Yeah.
the the house value and all of that, and being able to come prepared to mediation, with that actual, either an email or piece of paper
Hmm.
from a
Okay.
professional, a realtor professional, to say this is really what the house is worth. This is what it's going to cost to sell, and then this is what, the takeaway is. And then, because in Virginia, debt is, if you were to go to a judge, it's split down the middle, it's fifty
Hmm.
50.
Okay.
In mediation, you're able to negotiate a bit. So if you were the person who
Uh,
either, had credit card debt or student loan debt, you can, work it out with your ex to, they maybe get to keep more of the house when they sell, like the actual value of the house. And
mhm.
so there's lots of different ways that you can determine how to divide property and make it equitable for your particular situation. And that's something I enjoy doing in mediation, because you can get really, really creative.
Okay. Okay. The word creative is always like a something that we in real estate also that also is usually how most problems are solved is through creative. I mean, there's no one of the things that my mentor says, is like, there's 17 different ways to get from here to Virginia Beach, and
Hmm.
the same way there's 17 different ways to sell your house, right? So
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
just
that
have to
makes
find
sense.
what works for you.
Yes.
um Now you mentioned, and I mean, uh it's true that for many people their home is their biggest asset. Just in terms of like just the world of investing, real estate is a more stable. You can be a more
Hmm.
stable, investment than most. So let's say you couples working through a PSA.
Hmm.
What are their options in terms of, like who keeps the house? Like if they want to sell it, what happens? If they want to, one person wants to stay in the house and the other one, goes, what happens there?
Right. So that can be really tricky. And so, you have to talk through it. So what I do in mediation, you get the information about the house value. If there is one party that says, "Hey, I need to stay in the house. I love this house. It's the house we raised the kids in." A lot of those emotional factors come into play.
Hmm.
You really have to look at what the ex-spouse, are they really going to be financially able to let the other person keep the house? And what I mean by that is that whatever the equity is in the home, that, the person who's staying has to pay the other party out, so that,
Okay.
they're not left penalized. It has to be it has to be fair. And that's something that gets worked through. And oftentimes what couples will find is that they may have the equity in the home, but they need to pay off debt. They need to make sure that they settle up any joint debt that they accrued during their marriage, and then figure out their way forward. And so, oftentimes, what will happen is the best option and the one that affords a person more choices is to sell
Okay.
and then divide the proceeds in a way that makes sense based on debt and other options that they've figured out. So again, that creativity comes to play,
Uh-huh.
and then moving forward and then making a reinvestment in real estate, because that especially in this area, it is one of the best investments you can make, because the market continues to get just stay hot and keep getting
Right.
hotter.
Right.
They're getting getting value very quickly, and so that's something that typically will end up happening. Now, as a mediator, I'm neutral, and so I can't push them in any direction, but I
Mm-hmm.
can only lay out the facts. So if
Okay.
someone were to say, I want to keep the house, and I'm going to have, but then I have to pay out $50,000 to my ex, and they may not have that, and so
Right.
then they may not be able to even be eligible to take like a second, like a home equity line of credit to do the
Right.
payout. There's a lot of factors to that, and then truly, can they afford the mortgage once the ex moves on? And
Uh-huh.
that all of those things come into play, and when you start to get into the the math of it and taking a look at it on a spreadsheet, the situation could appear to be a lot different than what someone really wanted at the beginning.
Yeah. Man, spreadsheets, they're the equalizer.
They are, absolutely. It can be a little startling when you see it on paper, and what does your debt look like
Uh-huh.
month to month. And oftentimes
Hmm.
that's when folks will realize that they need to sell their current home, but they end up finding something with the help of a professional. What's the best area to invest
Yeah.
in?
Hmm.
What can I give the most I can get for my money? And and then take it from there.
And I mean, even just like, I mean, I know I'm just, being like half jokingly, like the idea of like, spreadsheets are one of the ultimate equalizers, but it seems like sometimes, like when, and maybe, when going back to the very beginning, talk about like firsthand, secondhand, thirdhand
Hmm.
knowledge, is that
Hmm.
when if a couple gets into this situation, right? Like
Hmm.
the way that they proceed is through what they have heard happens, rather
Yes.
than getting, when you when you get a spreadsheet together, that's now like looking at the big picture rather than my end of the deal. Is
Right.
that what you experience?
That's what I always go through. And I warn the couples up front, that's what we're going to do in mediation. And it's different than, let's say, what an attorney will do. So I call it the law and order effect. There are a lot of people
Okay.
that think they're going to, get their day in court, and they're going to be, they're going to punish their ex, and they're going to hire a lawyer, and they're going to take everything. And I hear that from clients, I hear that from friends, and just that. And I think you mentioned it earlier, like that sort of that rumor mill of what happens. That's oftentimes, in fact, almost all the time, not what happens at all. So if you were to get yourself a lawyer and say, I'm going to sue to keep the house,
Hmm.
in the end, the lawyer is still has to look at what is your debt to income ratio, what does it look like to buy the other person out, how does it work. And not only that, you're paying for your attorney, but now your ex has to pay for an attorney also.
Hmm.
In mediation, you're splitting that cost, and so the legal fees are and just so much less than actually
Hmm.
using an attorney. And
Okay.
then if you're fighting it out in court, you're not going to get that time to sit at and tell the judge and the court how why you deserve the house.
Mm.
That none of that matters. In the end, it has to be equitable.
Right. And okay, so there's and I think it seems like for you, one of the values that you add is, being creative takes time, and
Yes.
it takes, a lot of digging, a lot of thinking, and collaborating, even like some conflict as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
um
Yep.
and so I think, like, upfront, to be honest, before I met you, I did not know what a mediator was. and I don't even know what they did, right? So,
Right.
like I think the upfront, like you do provide legal counsel or in sense like legal advice, or
Well, it's
tell me about,
yeah.
because now
I,
there's mediating, and then there's also the like an attorney, there's a court,
right.
so we are dealing, when people come to you along with real estate, they are getting some kind of
The rules of the road,
right,
how it
exactly,
works.
right,
Yes,
right. So
that's what I
how,
provide.
what's the, okay, so tell me about that, the between what you do and an attorney and legal services,
Right.
the difference, and maybe even some ways in which you do something similar.
Sure. So I'll start with similar. Similar, we both, an attorney or a mediator has to know the rules of Virginia. So there's a formula, let's say, for child support in Virginia that, people talk about, oh, my ex took me to the cleaners. It's, terrible. I'm paying so much in child support. Well, it really just comes down to what your income is, what your ex's income is, and what the
Okay.
expenses are for the kid and or children, and then what the amount is that you're actually owe each other, and that's based on the number of nights, the overnights that you have with your children versus your ex. And so that's a calculation, and I do that.
Huh.
When it comes to, so it's a neutral thing. So I get the facts, I plug it in, and then we're left with what the outcome is. And it's the same thing with the spousal support or dividing assets in a PSA. I get the facts and we move forward, and the couple decides how it works. If on an attorney's side, number one, they can act, on the behalf of the law. They can give actual legal advice, but they only take one side. And so even if you had a no fault divorce and you decided to file, there's still a plaintiff and a defendant, and the plaintiff will be, if they decide to go get an attorney, that attorney will only represent the plaintiff and look
Mhm.
at the plaintiff and what is best for them. And so that can oftentimes introduce a dispute, because if
Mhm.
one side is pushing for something that, and so mediation, you cut all of those hours of back and forth, but attorney to attorney. It's better just to have a couple together. I also do work with attorneys in
Okay.
mediation, so someone could have representation and sit in mediation with me and all together. But and for me, I'm not providing legal advice per se. I know the rules
Mhm.
of the road,
Right.
and I'll say, well, this is how it works.
Mhm.
They can make a decision from there,
Okay.
but I'm not pushing either side in any direction.
Right, right. And I mean, it just really sounds like there's so much, like you say, and what I also learn in real estate is like, you know the rules of the road,
Mhm.
but the like what you can do within those rules, there's
Yes,
so many ways to, I don't know, to I'm old
creative.
school.
Yeah.
I'm old school. I grew up with the saying "skin the cat." So there's so
Yeah.
many different ways that you could reach an equitable agreement
Yes,
between both parties.
that's right.
Um, and I think just thinking through even being creative and being equitable, there
Mhm.
is a, there is value to selling a home and then also buying out, right? So what are some of the potential outcomes for a couple that decides, either let's say they sell a house,
Mhm.
what's the outcome there in terms of splitting down the middle, and then also
Sure.
like if they buy out, what are some of the potential uh what's some of the potential gain there?
Sure. So if they were to sell, depending on what they owed and what the realtor fees were, they can come out with tens of thousands of dollars per person to
Hmm.
go reinvest, and sometimes there are people who move out of the area, so they may buy real estate elsewhere or buy a home for their children in the area, so they're staying. Young people right now getting real estate, I'm sure, is very tricky. Sometimes that happens. There's just options for folks in general, or they buy a home and end up renting it out, and so it becomes
Okay.
sorts of income for them.
Right.
And so that helps. It sort of pays them back. And then if someone were to buy out the other, so you basically, based on that date you decided to separate, you're no longer accruing joint debt. And so if when the person is bought out of a home, it's usually it comes out of a home equity line of credit or some other asset that, and
Hmm.
if that person qualifies to do that, they can pay cash to the ex that's moving out.
Okay.
But then the one, if they were to do that, the ex can go and purchase whatever they would like in terms of real estate. But the person who gets to stay in the home, the ex party does not get any rights to any value that is increased on the home. So, for example, if you had
Okay.
$100,000 home and bought your spouse out, and then it was worth 500,000 in 3 years,
Okay.
that 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 value increase is yours and yours alone. You don't split that again. So the divorce and the property settlement agreement really just it captures a moment in time when all joint debt, and joint assets stop. And so you're determining, you have everything out on the line. I write it up, and how it gets divided, and then you know exactly what you're looking at going forward in terms of how you're going to afford your life and your lifestyle.
Okay, how you forge your life and lifestyle. I think in a previous conversation, one of the ways that you described it was, how is, or at least from a judge in court,
Mhm.
the main question they're asking is how is each party going to survive?
Right.
And so I think when in mediation, even with regards to selling the home, or what to do with the house,
Hmm.
the aim is to reach an agreement that allows each person to, not only survive, I mean, but we're human beings, we want to thrive, right? So we want
Right.
to, it's not like the end all be all, but how can
Right.
we set up, each party so that they can, move forward. And to be
Exactly.
honest, one of the reasons why I was really excited about this conversation is because, I just through, I mean, it's life, and I've been encountering more um, situations where what to do with the house it becomes more complicated, and so this has been like
Sure.
super super helpful. To,
Good.
now I got my notes, and and now I think I'm a lot better prepared to say, you know, to know how I can help, and also where I can say, look, you probably want to go to this person, to help you, specifically with that aspect.
Right. And to figure that out. And it's the same thing. I early on in my career had people argue about the value of the home, and versus the neighbor down the street, and all these things that I can't help with that. I can't weigh in. And I really just don't know. It's not my area. So yes, being able to refer someone out, it's helpful. And I, having yourself set up, and I'm a big fan of real estate, purchasing real estate. I have been a real estate investor since I was very young, and it really does make a difference, a change in affording choices going forward.
Right.
And that's I think when you're going into a situation where your life is about to change
Mm,
dramatically, being able to have a nest egg like real property is something that can really set you up
wow.
for success in the future. And especially when it comes to children, being able to
Right.
have a home that's stable and the same. And that's something too. You mentioned what the court looks like. They're going to make sure that a child's their situation, the households are at least on paper, it's equitable in terms of how they're living. And that's but having real estate, having fixed place to live, they come back to the same home. That's super super important. And so real estate becomes not only
Hmm.
financially a really important move, but for stability and emotional stability for children, being having a
Wow.
fixed place to call home makes a big difference.
Wow. Man, I tell you, that's a powerful, last word right there. I didn't ask for it, but I think it's a great way to sign off here for at least this first time. Aaron, thanks so
Sure.
much for hanging, and I look
Yeah.
forward to having more conversations. I know it's been helpful for me, and I really believe that it's been helpful to a whole lot of people. So thanks for hanging.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. It was really fun. Can't wait to do
Cool.
it again.